Every morning, before the sun even thought about rising, Maria pushed open the heavy glass doors of Langford and Company, the kind of corporate building that smelled like leather briefcases, espresso, and quiet power. Her arrival never made a sound, except the faint squeak of her cleaning cart and the swish of a mop bucket rolling across polished marble floors. Maria was a ghost in the building, a necessary fixture but never really seen. No one asked her name. No one looked her in the eye. To most, she was just asterisk, the cleaning lady. But she noticed everything. Every nervous intern rehearsing lines in front of a mirror. Every executive who stayed late to hide their panic behind spreadsheets. Every burnt-out employee who stared into their coffee like it held answers. She cleaned the corners where secrets collected. But no one ever asked her what she saw, what she thought, who she was. Until one day, a slip of the tongue changed everything. It happened on a rainy Tuesday. Maria was dusting the framed photos in the hallway outside the executive boardroom, the shrine to white collars and jawlines clenched in ambition. Inside, a group of foreign investors was waiting for the CEO. They spoke in rapid-fire German, tossing around complex financial terms. Maria kept cleaning, until she heard one of them mention something wrong. Her instinct kicked in. She muttered a correction under her breath. In fluent German, one of the investors heard her. He turned. "We bit?" he asked, eyebrows raised. Maria looked up, a rag still in her hand. "I believe you meant to say rendite, not umsatz." The hallway went still. Within minutes, the CEO was called in. He stared at Maria like she'd grown a second head. "You speak German?" She nodded. "And Spanish, French, Russian, Mandarin, Arabic, Swahili, and English." He blinked. The boardroom, full of suits and assumptions, fell into complete silence. That afternoon, Maria was called into the CEO's office, a place she'd only seen through the smeared glass walls while scrubbing handprints off the outside. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to a leather chair that probably cost more than her monthly salary. She sat, still in her cleaning uniform, hands folded tightly in her lap. "What's your story?" he asked. Maria hesitated. It had been years since anyone asked her that. People usually just made up their own stories about her. But something in his voice felt different, like he genuinely wanted to know. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "My resume," she said softly, "just in case." He unfolded it and began reading. His eyebrows climbed with every line. Bachelor's degree in linguistics. Master's degree in international relations. Worked with NGOs across Europe and Africa. Interpreter for the UN briefly. "Why are you cleaning floors?" he asked, stunned. Maria looked out the window for a moment. "Because life happens. Immigration paperwork got delayed. My mother got sick. I needed fast work." This was the only job that didn't ask too many questions. There was no bitterness in her voice, just facts. "But 8 languages? Languages are like keys," she said. "If you hold enough of them, you can unlock any room." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. Something about Maria didn't fit the usual mold, and that's exactly why she couldn't be ignored anymore. By the next morning, whispers had already started. "Did you hear what happened yesterday? Is it true she speaks Mandarin? Why is she still cleaning the toilets then?" Langford and Company was a place that ran on reputation and image. And Maria suddenly was a disruption to both. Later that week, a regional news blog caught wind of the story. "Cleaning lady stuns executives by speaking 8 languages." The article went viral, not just because it was unusual, but because it tapped into something deeper. People everywhere saw themselves in Maria. People with hidden skills. People underestimated. People working behind the scenes with stories no one bothered to ask about. The HR department called an emergency meeting. The CEO was being flooded with messages, some applauding him for discovering her, others questioning why such a talented woman had been mopping floors for months. But for Maria, the spotlight was uncomfortable. She had never wanted to be a story. She just wanted to be seen for who she really was. She walked the hallways now with a quiet awareness that every glance held new weight. Curiosity, guilt, admiration, confusion. And yet she never walked taller, never changed how she spoke, never demanded anything, because she knew something they were just beginning to learn. Respect earned in silence is stronger than applause given in noise. Thursday came faster than expected. Maria was given a temporary ID badge with the title Executive Liaison. Though no one really knew what that meant, she wore it over her cleaning uniform. An ironic touch she decided not to change. If they were going to see her, they might as well see all of her. The CEO, Mr. Reynolds, greeted her in the lobby. "Ready, as I'll ever be," she replied. Their first stop was a video conference with a potential Chinese partner company. The interpreter scheduled had canceled last minute. Maria stepped in without hesitation. Fluent Mandarin flowed from her lips like water through smooth stones. By the end of the meeting, the Chinese executives looked visibly impressed. One of them even remarked, "She speaks like she studied in Beijing." Maria smiled softly. "Tianjin, actually." Mr. Reynolds chuckled. "She doesn't miss." After the meeting, the CEO turned to her. "Do you realize what just happened?" Maria nodded. "You closed the deal." "No," he said. "We closed the deal." By lunch, the tone inside the building had shifted. People began to approach her, not out of curiosity or gossip, but out of respect. Real questions, real conversations. It was disorienting at first, but Maria handled it with the same grace she applied to everything. After lunch, she was asked to review a series of internal communications being translated for international branches. Not only did she catch dozens of errors, she offered better phrasing, cultural corrections, and saved the team from what could have been a deeply embarrassing rollout. As she handed the files back, one of the communications managers muttered, "Why wasn't she here months ago?" Maria heard it. She didn't respond. She didn't need to, because this wasn't about proving herself anymore. This was about rebuilding something that had been lost. Credibility, belonging, and dignity. And that's not something you demand. It's something you live. In the weeks that followed, Maria's presence was no longer a whisper behind closed doors. It was a conversation starter in the open. She wasn't just the cleaning lady who could speak 8 languages anymore. She was a problem solver, a bridge between cultures, and a reminder of untapped potential hidden in plain sight. The CEO made sure her talents were recognized in official meetings. Maria was invited to participate in negotiations, to assist with international calls, and even to mentor young employees struggling with language barriers. But it wasn't easy. Old biases and invisible ceilings loomed. Some coworkers still saw her through the lens of her former job, skeptical, dismissive, or resentful. One afternoon, Maria was asked to give a presentation about cultural nuances in business communication. The conference room was packed with skeptical faces, some trying to hide their disbelief that a janitor was speaking to them as an expert. Maria began with a story. Imagine you're invited to a dinner in Japan. You're served food with the chopsticks resting across the bowl. A small gesture, but one that means the meal is finished. If you don't notice and keep eating, you might offend your host. She paused, scanning the room. Language isn't just words. It's culture, respect, and connection. That's why we must understand more than just the vocabulary. By the time she finished, the room was silent. Not from boredom, but from realization. Later, a young intern approached her. "I never thought I'd learn so much from the cleaning lady." Maria smiled gently. "Everyone has a story. Sometimes you just have to listen." One late evening, Maria stayed behind to finish reviewing some contracts. The office was nearly empty, save for the CEO who was packing up. "Maria," he said, walking over. "I've been thinking." She looked up, curious. "You have skills that could change this company, this world, if you wanted. But you seem grounded. What's your dream?" Maria considered the question. For years, her dream had been simple. Stability for her family, a chance to breathe without fear. But now, standing in this gleaming tower of glass and steel, she felt something stir. "My dream," she said slowly, To help people. To build bridges where there are walls. He nodded. Then let's make sure you have the tools. I want you to head our new global communications initiative. Maria's eyes widened. This was more than a promotion. It was a chance to rewrite her story, from the margins to the center. As they shook hands, Maria felt a quiet pride swell inside. The journey from invisible to indispensable was just beginning. Maria's new role wasn't just a title. It was a challenge wrapped in layers of skepticism, high expectations, and the weight of proving herself all over again. She found herself navigating a world that still wasn't ready to fully accept someone who had once been invisible. Every meeting was a test, every project a chance to show that her skills were more than just a surprise party trick. Her days became a whirlwind of video calls with international partners, drafting multilingual reports, and training teams to understand the subtle cultural codes that often slipped unnoticed in global business. She drew from her past experiences, the stories of the people she'd met across continents, and the languages that had been her refuge and her passport to new worlds. But the pressure was real. There were moments when the noise of doubt, both from others and inside her own head, threatened to drown out her confidence. She remembered the days cleaning floors, where silence was her shield and invisibility her armor. Now, visibility meant vulnerability. Yet, Maria pushed forward, fueled by something deeper than ambition. It was the memory of the little girl who dreamed of belonging, the mother who sacrificed everything, and the countless unheard voices she now carried with her. Her work began to reshape not only the company's image but also the hearts of those who had once dismissed her. Her team started to look up to her, not just for her expertise but for her resilience, humility, and unwavering commitment. Slowly, the walls of prejudice began to crack. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, the CEO pulled her aside. "Maria," he said, "you've changed the way we do business. But more importantly, you've changed us." She smiled, knowing the journey was far from over. But for the first time, the path ahead looked bright. As Maria settled deeper into her new responsibilities, the reality of her position began to weigh heavily on her shoulders. The excitement of being recognized had faded into a complex dance of managing expectations, not only from others but from herself. Suddenly, the stakes were higher. Her actions were scrutinized, her decisions dissected. Every success was a quiet victory, but every misstep could easily be magnified. She remembered how, just months before, she'd been invisible, her voice unheard except in fleeting moments. Now, the spotlight was intense, and with it came pressure she hadn't anticipated. She found herself waking in the middle of the night, rehearsing presentations, second-guessing translations, and wondering if she was truly ready for this role. The company's board demanded results. Investors expected seamless communication across borders, and employees watched her as a symbol of change. Maria understood the symbolism. She was living proof that talent could be found anywhere, but that also made her a target. Some colleagues whispered behind her back, some questioned whether she deserved her position, and others struggled to see beyond their biases. Yet, amidst this whirlwind, Maria clung to her core values: humility, empathy, and perseverance. She sought advice from mentors she trusted, read voraciously about leadership and diplomacy, and reminded herself daily why she had started this journey. It wasn't for the titles or the recognition, but for the chance to make a real impact. In moments of doubt, she would think back to her mother's words, "Strength isn't about never falling. It's about rising every time you do." Those words became her anchor, steadying her as she navigated boardrooms and cultural complexities with grace. By embracing vulnerability and authenticity, Maria transformed challenges into opportunities. Her approach inspired her team and slowly shifted the company culture. Respect replaced skepticism. Inclusion began to take root where exclusion had long prevailed. And through it all, Maria never forgot the corridors where she once swept floors, the silent witness to dreams deferred and talents overlooked. The months rolled on, and Maria found herself standing at a new crossroads. The company had transformed in ways she hadn't dared to imagine when she first walked through those glass doors. Meetings once filled with tension now held a spirit of collaboration. Language barriers that had slowed progress dissolved under her guidance. She had become more than a liaison. She was a catalyst for change. But change is never linear. Just as momentum built, Maria faced a new challenge, an unexpected opportunity to lead a major international project that could redefine Langford and Company's place in the global market. The responsibility was daunting. Failure wasn't just a risk. It felt like a possibility with real consequences for the people who had begun to believe in her. She immersed herself in preparation, drawing from every lesson learned, every language mastered, every culture understood. Late nights turned into early mornings. She balanced deadlines with personal sacrifices, all the while carrying the quiet hope that her work would pave the way for others like her. Those overlooked, underestimated, but fiercely capable. On the day of the project's launch, the office was buzzing with anticipation. Executives gathered, clients dialed in from around the world, and Maria took her place at the center. Not as a janitor or a surprise, but as a leader. Her presentation flowed seamlessly, weaving stories, data, and cultural insight. Questions came fast and sharp, but Maria answered each with confidence and clarity. When the final slide appeared, the room erupted in applause, a moment of triumph that felt both surreal and hard-earned. Later, the CEO approached her, a rare smile breaking his usual composure. "You've done more than lead a project, Maria. You've rewritten what's possible here." Maria smiled back, knowing this chapter was just the beginning. Her journey from the shadows to the spotlight had reshaped not only her life but the lives of countless others who would follow. As she looked out over the city skyline that evening, Maria felt a profound sense of purpose. The invisible woman was gone. In her place stood a force of language, culture, and unwavering spirit. A reminder that sometimes, the most extraordinary stories come from the most unexpected places. Even as Maria basked in the glow of newfound recognition and success, shadows from her past refused to stay hidden. The story of the cleaning lady turned executive was inspiring, but behind the scenes, Maria wrestled with memories she hadn't yet faced. The journey that brought her here wasn't just about talent or opportunity. It was about survival, sacrifice, and the quiet battles no one saw. Late at night, when the office lights dimmed and the city's hum softened, Maria found herself alone with the echoes of her childhood. She remembered the cramped apartment where she grew up, the worn-out books she clutched like treasures, and the relentless drive her mother instilled in her. A mix of hope and toughness that shaped every decision she'd ever made. It was this foundation that fueled her resilience, but it was also a source of pain she hadn't fully unpacked. As the company pushed forward with new initiatives under her leadership, Maria realized she couldn't move ahead without reconciling the past. She began to seek out therapy, opening doors she'd long kept closed. The process was neither quick nor easy. Each session brought tears, revelations, and moments of doubt. But through this vulnerability, Maria discovered strength. Not just to face her own story, but to share it. In telling her truth, she connected with others in the company who had their own hidden struggles. What began as a personal healing journey blossomed into a movement within Langford and Company, where stories of perseverance, identity, and growth were welcomed instead of buried. Maria's leadership evolved beyond business success. It became about creating a culture where people were seen, heard, and valued for their whole selves. This shift didn't go unnoticed. Board members praised the improved morale and creativity. Investors applauded the company's authentic image, and employees felt a renewed sense of purpose. For Maria, this was the real victory. A company that didn't just profit but thrived because it embraced its humanity. Yet, the path ahead remained complex. Balancing the demands of her role with her personal healing was a daily challenge. But Maria faced it head-on, armed with the knowledge that true leadership is born from both strength and vulnerability. As she stood in her office one evening, gazing at the city lights, Maria understood that her story was far from over. The invisible woman who once swept floors was now a beacon, a reminder that the most profound transformations often begin with the courage to confront what lies within. Maria's role continued to evolve, expanding beyond the boundaries of Langford and Company. She found herself called upon to speak at conferences, lead workshops, and advise organizations on cultural competency and global communication. Each engagement was a new stage, a fresh opportunity to amplify the message that had carried her from invisibility to influence, that every person's voice matters, especially those too often overlooked. Traveling was exhilarating but exhausting. Airports, hotel rooms, and foreign cities became familiar yet strange territories. Maria navigated languages and customs not just as a skilled linguist but as an ambassador of stories. Stories of resilience, of overcoming, of unexpected potential. Yet, no matter how far she went, Maria remained grounded in the lessons from her early life. She never forgot the smell of the cleaning supplies, the hush of empty offices, or the quiet determination it took just to survive day by day. These memories fueled her passion to build bridges, between cultures, between people, between assumptions and realities. At Langford and Company, her initiatives inspired new hiring policies focused on diversity and inclusion, mentorship programs for employees from underrepresented backgrounds, and open forums where stories could be shared freely. Resistance still lingered in some corners, but Maria faced it with grace and persistence, knowing that true change takes time and unwavering commitment. Back home, she kept her mother close to her heart. They spoke often, the mother proud and amazed at the daughter's journey, the daughter grateful for the sacrifices that had paved the way. Maria's work became more than a career. It was a calling to transform not just companies but communities, reminding everyone that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. The invisible walls of silence and neglect began to crumble, one conversation at a time. And as Maria looked toward the future, she understood that her greatest achievement wasn't the languages she spoke or the deals she closed. It was the lives she touched and the doors she opened for those who would come after her. As Maria settled into her expanding role as a leader and advocate, the true impact of her journey began to ripple far beyond the walls of Langford and Company. Her story, once whispered in the quiet corridors and overlooked corners, now echoed in boardrooms, community centers, and classrooms. She understood that legacy wasn't built overnight. It was crafted through consistent actions, decisions grounded in empathy, and a relentless commitment to lifting others as she rose. Maria initiated scholarship programs for young women from immigrant backgrounds, offering them a chance at education she once only dreamed of. She partnered with nonprofits to provide language training and job placement, helping others overcome barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. At the company, her efforts reshaped policies to ensure inclusion wasn't a checkbox but a lived reality. Hiring became more diverse, voices from different walks of life were sought out, and cultural sensitivity was embedded into every aspect of business. But the most profound change was perhaps the cultural shift she inspired, where empathy replaced indifference, where listening replaced assumptions, and where every person's story was valued. Maria often reflected on how far she'd come, from the invisible woman sweeping floors to a beacon of hope and transformation. Yet, she never lost sight of her roots. The humility and grace that had carried her through tough times remained her foundation. She mentored others not with grand speeches, but through genuine connection, sharing not just success but struggles, reminding everyone that vulnerability is a source of strength. Her leadership inspired a new generation, a wave of changemakers who carried forward the torch she lit. Maria's journey became a testament to the power of perseverance, the beauty of diversity, and the truth that sometimes the most extraordinary voices rise from the quietest places. As she looked out at a conference filled with eager faces, Maria smiled, knowing her story was not just her own. It was a legacy in motion, a living reminder that every voice deserves to be heard. Maria's rise had been inspiring, but it was not without its challenges. As she pushed for deeper changes within the company and beyond, resistance began to surface more frequently, sometimes overt, sometimes subtle, but always persistent. Some colleagues clung to old ways of thinking, uncomfortable with the shifts in power dynamics and cultural narratives. Whispers and sideways glances followed her in meetings. There were moments when decisions were questioned not on their merit but on her background or unorthodox approach. It stung, but Maria had learned early that resistance is often a sign that progress is being made. Instead of retreating, she doubled down on her commitment, using these challenges as fuel rather than barriers. She sought allies among those open to change, building coalitions that valued diversity and inclusion not just as buzzwords, but as essential pillars of innovation and success. Through workshops and candid conversations, she worked to break down misconceptions and fears, showing how embracing difference enriched the company culture and its bottom line. Outside the office, Maria faced another kind of resistance: societal prejudices that made her journey more complex. From assumptions about her capabilities to questions about her place in executive circles, she encountered the harsh realities many face when breaking molds. Yet, with every hurdle, she reminded herself why the work mattered. For every skeptic she encountered, there were countless others inspired by her story, finding courage to pursue their own dreams despite obstacles. Her resilience became a beacon, proving that change isn't just possible, it's necessary. And though the path was often steep, Maria never lost sight of the bigger picture: a world where no one is invisible and every voice holds power. As Maria navigated the turbulent waters of resistance and change, she discovered that the most powerful tool she had wasn't her mastery of languages or her sharp intellect, but her ability to connect deeply with others. People weren't just moved by facts or figures, they were moved by stories, by shared experiences, by genuine empathy. Maria began hosting informal gatherings where employees from diverse backgrounds could share their stories, hopes, and challenges. These gatherings broke down walls that corporate policies alone could never reach. Barriers built over years of misunderstanding began to crumble as people realized how much they had in common beneath surface differences. Maria's own story became a thread woven into the fabric of these connections. She spoke openly about her struggles, her fears, and her dreams, making vulnerability a strength rather than a weakness. The ripple effect was profound. Teams became more collaborative, innovation blossomed, and morale soared. Executives took notice, and soon these gatherings were formalized into ongoing initiatives that shaped company culture. Beyond the office walls, Maria's message spread. She collaborated with community leaders, schools, and advocacy groups, amplifying the idea that connection and understanding are foundational to progress. She often reflected on the irony that, as someone who once felt invisible, her voice now carried the power to unite and inspire thousands. Maria's journey underscored a simple truth: no matter where you start, it's the connections you build and the empathy you share that leave the most lasting impact. Through every challenge, every late night, and every moment of doubt, Maria discovered a wellspring of strength she hadn't known she possessed. It wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, and relentless, the kind of strength forged in the invisible moments. The early mornings cleaning floors when no one noticed, the whispered corrections in foreign languages, the solitary hours spent learning and preparing for a chance that seemed forever out of reach. This unseen strength became the backbone of her leadership and her life. Maria learned that real power isn't about being seen or heard in the loudest way. It's about resilience, integrity, and the courage to keep moving forward even when the world doubts you. As her influence grew, she remained grounded, knowing that her journey was about more than personal success. It was about paving a path for others who might still be overlooked, undervalued, or underestimated. Her story became a testament to the fact that sometimes the most profound transformations come from the quietest places and the smallest acts of courage. In company meetings, boardrooms, and conferences, Maria's voice carried the weight of experience and the spark of hope. She championed those whose potential was hidden behind barriers of prejudice or circumstance, reminding everyone that talent is universal, but opportunity is not. And as she stood at the helm of change, Maria held on to one truth above all: the greatest strength is found not in the spotlight, but in the unwavering belief in oneself, even when no one else does. Maria's vision extended far beyond the confines of Langford and Company. Recognizing the power of connection, she spearheaded initiatives that reached into global communities. Her programs fostered cross-cultural understanding not just within corporate walls but between cities, countries, and continents. She partnered with international NGOs and educational institutions, creating exchange programs where employees could immerse themselves in new cultures and languages. These experiences transformed perspectives, fostering empathy and collaboration on an unprecedented scale. Maria's fluency in multiple languages allowed her to bridge divides that had long hindered communication and progress. She personally led workshops in far-flung locations, from bustling markets in Morocco to quiet villages in Eastern Europe. Each encounter deepened her understanding of humanity's shared hopes and struggles. Yet, even as she expanded her reach, Maria remained intimately connected to her roots. Her commitment to empowering immigrants, refugees, and marginalized communities was unwavering. She funded scholarships and language classes, helping others unlock doors she once found closed. This global vision of inclusion and opportunity became Maria's signature legacy. A reminder that leadership isn't about power but about lifting others across every border. But change, no matter how noble, comes with costs. Maria felt the toll on her personal life as the demands of her expanding role intensified. Long hours, travel, and the emotional weight of her work sometimes left her exhausted and isolated. Friends and family, though proud, often felt distant as her world grew more complex and public. There were moments when the pressure felt unbearable, when the expectations of being a role model clashed with her own need for rest and reflection. Maria grappled with guilt over missed birthdays, lost connections, and the sacrifices required to keep moving forward. Yet, in those moments of vulnerability, she found new reservoirs of strength. She learned to set boundaries, to seek support, and to remind herself that leadership was also about self-care. These lessons didn't diminish her commitment. They enriched it. Maria's authenticity about the costs of change resonated with many, breaking the myth of the infallible leader. She became an advocate not just for progress but for balance, encouraging others to care for themselves as fiercely as they pursued their goals. Throughout her journey, Maria never forgot the moment that changed everything. The whispered correction in German, the surprised glance of the CEO, the first time she was truly seen. That single voice, once silenced, had echoed louder than she could have imagined. She realized that sometimes all it takes is one person to speak up, to be heard, to make a difference. Maria's story became a beacon for those who felt invisible, a testament to the transformative power of courage and authenticity. She often spoke about the importance of giving space to voices unheard, of listening without judgment, and of valuing the unseen strengths within every individual. Her leadership was a living example that change begins with one voice and grows into a chorus that can reshape worlds. As Maria looked toward the future, she held onto this truth with unwavering faith. No matter how quiet or small it seems, a single voice can ignite a revolution. Maria's journey had been a tapestry woven with moments of triumph and challenge, but nothing prepared her for the crossroads she now faced. The company had grown, the culture transformed, and her leadership was widely respected. Yet, with success came new pressures. Boardroom politics intensified, old rivalries resurfaced, and expectations weighed heavily on her shoulders. A critical decision loomed. A merger with a multinational conglomerate that promised unprecedented growth, but threatened to dilute the values she had fought so hard to instill. As the negotiations unfolded, Maria found herself at the center of a storm. Advocates pushed for financial gain and expansion, while she argued fiercely for the preservation of the company's newfound commitment to inclusion and respect. Late nights turned into heated debates, alliances shifted, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. Maria felt the weight of every voice depending on her. Employees, clients, communities, each trusting her to steer the ship true. It was a moment of reckoning, not just for the company but for her own convictions. Could she protect the soul of Langford and Company while navigating the relentless currents of corporate ambition? The decision would define her legacy. With resolve forged in years of perseverance, Maria stood firm. She reminded the board of the company's transformation, the lives touched, and the future they could build together if values were not sacrificed for profit. Drawing on her gift for connection and understanding, she proposed a new vision, a merger that would honor diversity, empower employees, and expand opportunities globally without compromising integrity. Her words resonated. Slowly, skepticism gave way to respect. The board voted not just on numbers but on principles. Maria's leadership shone brightest in this defining hour. Her ability to balance pragmatism with passion, strategy with empathy, turned the tide. The merger proceeded with terms that safeguarded the company's culture and commitments. As news spread, Maria's courage inspired others in the industry to reconsider what true success means. She had not only preserved what mattered but elevated it. Her journey from the quiet halls to the heart of decision-making was complete, not because she sought power, but because she embraced responsibility. Years later, Maria reflected on the path that had transformed her life and countless others. From the janitor who quietly corrected a language mistake to a leader shaping global conversations, her story was a testament to the power of unseen strength, relentless courage, and the profound impact of a single voice. She continued to champion inclusion, education, and empowerment, knowing that legacy is not measured by titles, but by the doors opened for others. Maria's name became synonymous with change, not just within Langford and Company but across industries and communities worldwide. She established foundations, supported young leaders, and told her story with honesty and grace, inspiring generations to come. And though the spotlight had shifted, Maria remained humble, remembering the quiet mornings cleaning floors, the silent moments of hope, and the journey that taught her that true power lies not in being seen, but in making others visible. Her story was a living legacy, a beacon lighting the way for those who dare to speak, to be heard, and to transform the world, one voice at a time. Maria's ascent was visible to all, but few knew the battles she fought behind closed doors. Each day brought new challenges, not just in meetings or negotiations, but in the quiet moments when doubts crept in. The weight of expectations often felt suffocating. Could she continue to break barriers without losing herself? She wrestled with imposter syndrome, the nagging feeling that one mistake could undo years of progress. Late nights were sometimes spent alone, reviewing emails, preparing speeches, or simply sitting in silence, searching for strength. The scars of past struggles surfaced unexpectedly, reminding her that resilience is not a linear journey. Yet, through it all, Maria learned to embrace vulnerability as a source of power. She cultivated a support system of trusted friends, mentors, and family who grounded her in reality and encouraged her to keep moving forward. These unseen battles shaped her leadership style, empathetic, patient, and deeply human. She became a champion not only for corporate change but for mental health awareness, encouraging open conversations and destigmatizing the struggles many face in high-pressure environments. Maria's story wasn't just about success. It was about perseverance in the face of adversity, teaching others that strength is forged in moments of doubt as much as in triumph. Sometimes, during the quietest hours, Maria would reflect on her journey, from a young girl growing up in hardship to a woman standing on global stages. The contrast was stark, but it fueled her determination to be authentic, to show others that even those who seem strongest carry invisible wounds. This honesty, far from a weakness, became a source of connection that brought teams closer and inspired real, lasting change. With experience came a deep desire to give back. Maria dedicated herself to mentoring young professionals who, like her, had once felt invisible. She created programs that paired emerging talent with seasoned leaders, focusing on personal growth as much as career advancement. Maria's mentorship went beyond skills. She shared lessons on resilience, authenticity, and finding one's voice amid noise. Her mentors described her as a beacon of wisdom and kindness, someone who believed fiercely in their potential even when they doubted themselves. She fostered an environment where mistakes were seen as learning opportunities and where diversity of thought was celebrated. Many of those she mentored went on to become leaders themselves, crediting Maria with inspiring their confidence and shaping their paths. For Maria, these relationships were a source of joy and renewal. Watching others rise reminded her of her own journey and reinforced her commitment to creating a world where talent is recognized and nurtured regardless of background. Maria also understood that mentoring wasn't a one-way street. She learned from her mentors, their fresh perspectives, their challenges, and their hopes, keeping her leadership agile and responsive. Through these connections, she built a legacy of empowerment that extended far beyond her own achievements, planting seeds that would bloom for generations. Maria's influence extended beyond corporate walls. She became a sought-after speaker at global forums on leadership, diversity, and social justice. Each speech was crafted with care, blending personal anecdotes with practical insights. Her words resonated because they came from lived experience, not theory. Maria advocated for systemic change, challenging institutions to rethink policies and practices that perpetuated inequality. She worked with governments and nonprofits to develop initiatives that promoted education, language access, and economic empowerment for marginalized communities. Her projects spanned continents, from launching scholarship funds in her hometown to establishing vocational training centers in developing regions. Though her schedule was grueling, Maria remained committed to these efforts, believing that true leadership requires lifting others up wherever possible. Her global perspective enriched her work, deepening her understanding of the interconnectedness of social issues and the need for collaborative solutions. Through her advocacy, Maria inspired a new generation of changemakers dedicated to building a more equitable world. Maria often reflected on the irony of her journey. A woman once unseen, now a catalyst for global transformation. Her fluency in multiple languages was more than a skill. It was a bridge connecting cultures, ideas, and hearts. Each project carried the weight of stories she had encountered throughout her life, fueling her determination to create spaces where everyone's voice could be heard. Despite the accolades and achievements, Maria's journey came with profound personal sacrifices. The relentless pace left little time for self-care or relationships. She missed family milestones, friendships faded, and moments of solitude became rare. There were times she questioned whether the price was too high. The burden of being a symbol, expected to embody strength at all times, was heavy. Maria grappled with loneliness, the paradox of being surrounded by people yet feeling isolated. Yet, in these quiet struggles, she found moments of clarity. She learned to prioritize balance, to say no, and to seek joy in small moments. Maria embraced mindfulness practices and leaned on loved ones more openly. These adjustments didn't diminish her impact. Instead, they fueled sustainable leadership. Her candidness about personal challenges humanized her further, inspiring others to acknowledge their own needs without shame. Maria's story became one not only of success but of holistic well-being, reminding the world that leaders thrive when they nurture themselves as much as their work. She also began advocating for workplace policies that recognize the whole person: mental health days, flexible schedules, and support systems that allowed employees to thrive beyond their job roles. Her vulnerability opened doors for others to share their stories and seek help, transforming the culture into one of compassion and strength. Maria's vision evolved into something bigger than any one company or speech. She began cultivating a movement, a network of leaders, activists, and everyday people committed to inclusion, equity, and empowerment. Through social media, conferences, and collaborative projects, Maria connected voices from diverse backgrounds, fostering solidarity and collective action. The movement challenged norms and pushed for policy reforms in education, workplace equity, and immigration. Maria championed storytelling as a tool for change, encouraging individuals to share experiences that build empathy and understanding. The movement's impact grew, influencing legislation, corporate strategies, and cultural attitudes worldwide. Maria remained a central figure, but she was quick to emphasize that this was a collective effort. She celebrated grassroots leaders and lifted up stories from the margins, knowing that true change requires many voices singing in harmony. The movement became a testament to the power of connection, resilience, and shared purpose, a living legacy that transcended any single achievement. Maria often marveled at the strength that emerged when people came together, realizing that her own journey was part of a much larger story, a story of hope, justice, and shared humanity. Years into this journey, Maria found moments to pause and reflect. Sitting in her quiet study, surrounded by letters, photos, and mementos of a life transformed, she felt a profound gratitude. The path from the cleaning carts to global stages was filled with unexpected turns, hard lessons, and beautiful victories. Maria acknowledged the countless people who had supported her, the mentors who believed, the friends who stood by her, the family whose sacrifices paved the way. She also recognized the importance of renewal, of embracing rest creativity, and new dreams. Maria committed to writing her memoir, capturing the full story for those who would come after. She understood that stories have power, the power to inspire, heal, and ignite change. As she looked ahead, Maria felt a renewed sense of purpose. To continue lifting others, to keep learning, and to remind the world that no matter where you start, your voice and your story matter. Her journey was far from over, but in that quiet moment, Maria knew she was exactly where she needed to be. She thought about the countless young people she hoped to reach, the barriers yet to be broken, and the futures yet to be written. Maria's story was not just her own. It was a beacon lighting the way for all who dared to dream and speak their truth. We live in a world that teaches us to judge quickly, to draw conclusions based on fragmented appearances, to form opinions based on what is visible, posted, or whispered. But life, real life, is not made of straight lines or predictable equations. It's made of silences that scream, of glances that hide oceans of pain, and of stories that only make sense when you look back with new eyes. How many times have you pointed a finger at someone, convinced you knew their intentions, only to discover, too late, that you were wrong, that you were deceived not by the person, but by your own inability to see the complexity behind their actions? Life constantly reminds us that not everything is what it seems. The hero might have flaws, the villain might be wounded, and the truth may be hidden beneath layers of survival, fear, and silence. Sometimes the person we thought was guilty was just broken. Sometimes the person we trusted most was wearing a mask so perfect that even their own reflection wouldn't recognize them. But the point isn't to live suspiciously, distrusting everyone and everything. The point is to develop a gaze that goes beyond the surface, a gaze that pauses before judging and asks, what pain shaped this person? What story brought them here? We've all been misunderstood. We've all had moments where our silence was interpreted as coldness, where our caution was seen as arrogance, where our way of surviving was seen as indifference. We've all had to wear masks to be accepted, loved, or simply tolerated. And we've all misread someone else's silence, forgetting that behind every pair of eyes lives a universe we'll never fully access. Not everything is what it seems is not just a warning. It's an invitation to humility. It's a call to remember that the truth is rarely pure and never simple, that people are not black and white, that there is always more behind a choice, a reaction, a distance. It's an invitation to listen more, speak less, and observe with presence. Because when you look closely, truly closely, you'll realize how many battles are fought in silence, how many smiles are actually shields, and how many monsters are simply people who were never taught how to love without hurting. So before you turn your back, before you point your finger, before you form your final judgment, stop. Ask yourself, what am I not seeing? Because the most painful truths are often the ones disguised behind the most familiar faces. And in the end, life always finds a way to expose what was hidden, not to punish us, but to teach us, to humble us, to open our eyes. And once your eyes are opened, they never see the world the same way again.